Thank you. Okay, excuse me. The Ellicott Willem Nature Reserve at Elstonwick Park is a great template for how the community can positively impact some of the worst aspects of climate change emergency and provide an ongoing and sustainable resource for the community, as well as a stronghold for dwindling wildlife. In contrast, however, Albert Park Reserve, which is administered by Parks Victoria, seems to be in a state of degradation. It's continually being used as a greenfields building site for large and grandiose corporate sporting facilities with huge inroads into open green space for the racetrack facilities, the buildings of the school, the aquatic centre and more change rooms. Little connection to local sporting groups as well. The park and reserves are in poor condition, with parts never having recovered since the handover of the last Grand Prix. Will any of the candidates tonight commit to advocate for a more enlightened future for Albert Park Reserve that will see the ability for local sporting groups to coexist with a revised master plan which might increase an emphasis on habitat creation and the rewilding of the reserve with planting of native plants?
I think, if George, actually, I think Lauren. It's not your turn, Georgie. It's Lauren's, and I think are you?
Just a few words in there. The first reserve and the end.
So the basic question is, will you commit to a more enlightened future for Albert Park Reserve, which will look after local community use as well as increase emphasis on habitat creation, etc.?
Yes, definitely. We've made a $5 million commitment to Albert Park Lake. A third of the wall has collapsed and is only at 70% capacity. This means with the additional funding of the wall and to have it restored to its full glory, that we can irrigate the local area and protect the wildlife as well.
Thank you. Short and very sweet,
Short
and that's
sweet,
good.
please.
Kim,
Great.
your turn.
Oh, Kim, yep.
Thanks. Yes, that's better. When I nominated as a candidate, or when the lovely Greg Day from Twisk sort of squeezed out of Tim Baxter from the Greens Party that I was going to be nominated as the candidate, the first people to reach out to me were Hugo Armstrong and his group of sporting clubs associations. And it shows the frustration that this community has had in having to self-advocate for their own facilities, the facilities of young women in sports clubs, and the facilities of school groups that use the lake. There is so much integration of community into Albert Park Reserve, and just having it as a stasis home for the Grand Prix so that it can be shown on the tally and then left alone again for the rest of the year isn't good enough for the community. Like Lauren, we're also promising to spend the $5 million that it will take to repair the lake wall. That lake wall was in the original master plan. It was built, I believe, in 1930 and hasn't been maintained since then. That's a 90-year-old wall that is still waiting just for some basic maintenance. Albert Park has had some great master plans in the 90s and more recent. But what it lacks is funding, and I think we really need to push the government to put better funding into the parks management, especially when these areas are under Parks Victoria governance instead of the local council, and it ends up in a space between management where nobody can get anything done. So yes, I'll advocate very hard for the Lake Reserve.
I think...
Pardon? Nina's turn.
I should also start out by saying I don't have any particular announcements tonight. I'll just put that caveat. There has been record funding into Albert Park. It may not appear that way, but there actually has when you look at it critically. There recently was a pavilion opened at Oval 1. We've also helped to upgrade South Melbourne districts and Ajax, that pavilion there. And there's been a lot of liaison with hockey and football and clubs there. And I know, and I'm sorry I don't have the exact percentage, but I know that a significant amount of the lake wall has been repaired. Still more needs to be repaired. So while I'm making these statements, I'm not saying there's a lot more to be done. There is definitely a lot more to be done. There is a master plan, and certainly there are many next steps to be undertaken. I'm advocating very hard for all of those. I fully appreciate how much use there is in the park, and I know that it is a delicate balance. We've got the beautiful swans. I know that we recently released some fish into Albert Park Lake because we're also helping with sustainability into the future. But there is a lot more to be done in that space, but also when you're in government, you don't have an endless budget and you can't just promise and fulfil every single request that comes. That isn't to say the requests that are being put forward aren't reasonable, because I think it's certainly valid for clubs to advocate for community sport. So I'm hopeful we will have more to say in this space. Thank you.
Going back to the ANIM topic, so I will be there to fight for ANIM for the whole time that I'm elected. It's one of my priorities. The other priority is this sporting facility. We talk about mental health issues in our community. Sports is amazing for everyone in the community. We have hundreds of people that are going out there. Relationships are being built. So we really need to do this. But I think that the park also highlights that we need to better resource Parks Victoria. Parks Victoria is under a lot of pressure, and they need more resources, and they need better strategies in place to actually implement these master plans. From what I understand, the master plans have happened before, and we are not seeing enough of a fulfilment of these ideas. Also, I think there needs to be a different conversation with the Grand Prix. We've been told we have it for the next 10 years. I think that we need to work with the Grand Prix to make sure that the small businesses and the communities see some benefit. The Grand Prix comes to our village, and I can tell you that as a small business, there isn't a lot of reward for it, and a lot of the community centres should be rewarded. So I think we need to work with the Grand Prix organisation to say, if you're in our village, how do you leave it looking better than you found it maybe? And maybe we could spread some of the economic profit that this brings to us to this electorate, specifically to this electorate. So that's what I'd be advocating for.